Coming up, escalating attacks from Hezbollah in South Lebanon as the Biden administration urges Israel to trust in diplomacy. Plus, radical Islam's media jihad controlling perception around the world. Analysis from Arab culture expert Dr. Mordechai Kedar. And uncomfortable conversations with a Jew. The new book busting anti-Semitic myths and stereotypes. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. As Hezbollah terrorists seriously escalated projectile attacks on northern Israel over the last week, the Biden administration is urging the Jewish nation not to strike back so hard that it leads to all-out war. This comes as Israel says it's destroyed half of Hamas's fighting forces in Rafah. Take a look. In meetings with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, a senior aide to President Biden called for Israel to trust diplomacy and refrain from all-out war. With Israelis living in the north enduring daily shellings and some 100,000 having evacuated their homes, one Israeli reserve major told CBN News that trusting diplomacy is not realistic.
So how diplomacy can work when you are talking about a regime that is exporting ideology that is calling for submission of their values for their Islamic Sharia laws values in our region, and Israel is actually for them the Jewish democratic state of Israel.
Israeli Reserve Major Shadi Khalul is an Aramean Christian from the Galilee. He says time is of the essence.
Actually, the earlier we do it, the more chances we have to win this war. If we delay this conflict, they will be ready and get ready to destroy Israel and then move on to other countries in Europe.
Earlier in the war, Israel faced U.S. and international opposition to invading Rafah and defeating the remaining Hamas battalions. Now Israeli forces say they've destroyed 2 of the 4 battalions and degraded the other 2. They've also discovered hundreds of rockets intended for Israeli civilians. Israeli media is reporting a new document that shows military and intelligence officials knew weeks in advance of Hamas's plan to invade Israel and kidnap as many as 250 Israelis. While officials believe defenses were strong enough to prevent an invasion, Hamas succeeded in killing 1,200 civilians and taking about 250 hostages on October 7th. Some of the hostages have died in captivity, and those who've been released and rescued testified to psychological, physical, and sexual abuse. Vice President Kamala Harris highlighted that these crimes are likely still happening to hostages held in Gaza.
And I just met with Amit, a survivor who has bravely come forward with her account of sexual violence while she was held captive by Hamas. These testimonies, I fear, will only increase as more hostages are released.
The old saying in journalism is, if it bleeds, it leads. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has a new twist on that. The Wall Street Journal reports he wrote to fellow Hamas leaders that, quote, "We make headlines only with blood." Chris Mitchell spoke with Israeli scholar Dr. Mordechai Kedar about Hamas's use of civilian deaths in Gaza to control public perception. Take a look.
The media jihad is part of the jihad. The jihad is an overwhelming effort or a great effort which the Islamic nation or the Islamic community actually spends in order to defeat their enemies. It could be the jihad by the sword. It is jihad by economy, the BDS. It is jihad by the media. Al Jazeera, for example, is part of their jihad. In their own, they admit that Al Jazeera is part of the jihad. Yusuf Qaradawi actually said it explicitly. I heard it with my own ears.
How does this media jihad work?
Media jihad, first of all, is based on the hadith, the old tradition, which Prophet Muhammad is quoted to say that the war is deception. Means deception is part of the war. Now, by the media, it is the easiest way how to deceive. There are all kinds of clips all over the media, the social media, how children and youngsters in Gaza are smearing ketchup on themselves, and they, rub it, and they make faces as if they are injured, and this looks exactly like blood. And then they start laughing how they con the world. And yes, there are many of those. Look, I'm not saying that all of those who were killed in Gaza are fake, but definitely from the pictures which are running around the world, definitely there is a good percentage of fake pictures.
Yeah, and how does the West fall or succumb to this jihad media war?
First of all, the West takes everything on face value. When the Hamas Ministry of Health, they care about health, as you know, announces that there are 30-something thousand of dead people in Gaza, who else counted them? Who knows their names? Nobody. Secondly, they never divide between fighters and the people who are not fighting. They never. For them, even a jihadist who is shooting at Israelis is a civilian, because this is Hamas. This is an organization. It's a movement. It's not an army. So for them, everybody is a civilian. Even if he's shooting with RPG, our buses with soldiers. And unfortunately, Western media outlets fall in this trap. They believe every word which Hamas are saying, and by portraying it in a very professional way, they convince everyone in the West. Don't forget that Al Jazeera bought people from CNN, from Fox, from Sky, from MSNBC, from many media outlets, and they, by tripling their salaries, and now all these talents actually are serving the media jihad, which is waged by Al Jazeera, by Qatar, which supports all the Muslim Brotherhood organizations all over the world, including in America, and tries to bring this jihad, through the media jihad, into every arena in the world, not only in Arabic, but also in English.
Up next, Busting Stereotypes, a new book tackles anti-Semitism and misperceptions about Jewish people and Judaism. Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew. That's the title of a new book by New York Times bestselling authors Noa Tishby and Emmanuel Acho. Their goal? To connect the dots between Jewish hatred and stereotypes from the past and how they're still fueling anti-Semitism today. Wendy Griffith has more.
The Jewish race, is that a thing? Are Jewish people white? But Jewish people control Hollywood, right? Am I even allowed to say Jew?
Hi everyone, I'm Noa Tishby and I am a Jew.
And I'm Emmanuel Acho, and I have Uncomfortable Conversations.
In their new book, the co-authors of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Jew talk about seeing a problem and taking steps to address it.
Emmanuel noticed over a year before October 7th, the rise of anti-Semitism. And it was very interesting to me that somebody from outside of the Jewish community was able to detect that something is brewing. So he called me and he asked me if I would like to write this book. And I literally couldn't have said yes faster.
We're called to love people, but how can you love what you don't know? I finally got to learn about my present day Jewish brothers and sisters, what breaks their heart, what makes them smile, what makes them cry. And so I can try to be a genuine ally to those that are hurting.
Noah, you are Jewish. What are some of those stereotypes that are painful, that are heartbreaking, that you wish weren't there? And how do we address them?
Wow, beautiful question. So first of all, the thing to understand is that anti-Semitism, which is anti-Jewish hate, is the oldest form of hate and discrimination that is still being practiced today. We see first accounts of anti-Semitism in 300 BC in Alexandria in Egypt. So the Jews have always been the brunt of kind of like a bore the brunt of hate around the world. Anti-Semitism can look something like the Jews are the vermin of the earth and they're disgusting, like the Nazis used to say. But they also sound like, well, the Jews control the media and the Jews control the banks, which is also an anti-Semitic trope that people don't understand.
Tishby and Acho's book hit shelves just as pro-Palestinian protests spread across America's college campuses, bringing with them unprecedented levels of anti-Semitic statements and acts of violence.
And the thing to understand is this. They have been led to believe and been brainwashed to believe that Israel is actually causing a genocide on the Palestinian people, that Israel is a white colonialist state that shouldn't exist. That this has been going on for decades, so much so that now they think that anything that Israel does, and by extension, anything the Jews do, is wrong and needs to be dismantled. I am not discrediting Palestinian pain in any way, shape, or form. And being critical of Israeli government's policies is completely legitimate. This is not what we're seeing on campuses today. We're seeing gas the Jews. We're seeing such hate that is the result of decades of intentional poisoning, and we need to be very careful where this can lead.
Tishby, an Israeli activist and actress, recently tried to reason with anti-Israel protesters at the Sundance Film Festival, finding that most did not have their facts straight.
From the river to the sea, Palestine needs to be free from the occupation, which is illegal.
What's the river?
I forgot the river's name, but the sea is the Red Sea.
The Palestinian genocide, it's just awful.
What about the hostages? Do you know about the hostages?
Unfortunately, I'm not that educated about that part.
She fears what we've seen on college campuses comes dangerously close to jihadism.
So if you support jihadism, if you support that political arm of Islam as it manifests in Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas and ISIS and all the rest, then you're not on the side of history that supports democracy and liberties and everything we hold dear.
Acho, a former NFL linebacker and Fox Sports analyst, hopes their book will be an antidote that can possibly turn hatred to hope and even love.
First and foremost, I would hope for knowledge. I loved pursuing this book as a Christian man and the son of a pastor because of my affinity and intrigue by and for the Jewish community, right? When you read the Bible, you read about the Jews, you read about Jesus born in a manger, you read about Nazareth, you read about Bethlehem, but you kind of leave it in the Bible. And you don't remember that modern day there are Jews walking amongst you that are suffering.
And Noah, again, the stereotypes, what bugs you? What stereotype do you just think is ridiculous, or what stereotype is true?
I think the Jewish mama might be a real one, because I am one. And and all the cliches, I'm like, yeah, I'm very much like that. I really think my son can do no wrong. That's not true. He definitely can. So that, that one might be a bit real. But I loved the chapter about the Jewish stereotypes. We just let it all out, asking everything about money, about power, about being cheap, about all these things that to me are extraordinary, again, because when you come from a place of love and authenticity and faith and connectivity, nobody gets triggered, nobody gets upset, nobody gets hurt. You listen and you exchange ideas, and it was just a beautiful thing.
Despite the growing anti-Semitism, Tishby says she chooses to live wisely and not fearfully, adding that being Jewish is more than her faith. It's a very special way of life.
Even the basic thing of a Shabbat dinner, right? Every Friday night, whether you're secular or religious or traditional, whatever, most Jews will mark the night. So you sit around with your family and you don't have mundane conversations, and you do kind of this ritual that you've done for thousands of years, and it gives an anchor to the family that is pretty positive. Yeah. So there's some things about the Jewish way of life. This obsession with education is something that worked out throughout the years, right? So everything that we do is all out there. There's nothing secretive about being Jewish.
Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Coming up, Pastors from the U.S. and the U.K. standing with Israel and ready to encourage their congregations back home to do the same. A pastor to pastors says right now it's almost as important for them to concentrate on the Jews of the world as on their own congregations. Bishop Robert Stearns from Eagles Wings brings pastors to Israel yearly, and Chris Mitchell met a group recently at the Western Wall.
We're here to say that never again is now, and it's time for the Christian church to lift their voices strong in absolute support of Israel and the Jewish people worldwide. Jewish communities around the world are under attack. It's not safe for Jewish people to walk through major cities on our planet. There is an absolute need for Christians to raise their voices as Shomrei Achumot, watchmen on the wall, on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people. And these pastors have come to bear witness to the atrocities of Hamas and to declare that their congregations will stand strong with the people and land of Israel.
Why so important at this time in Israel's history after October 7th?
October 7th was a game changer, not only for Israel. October 7th was a game changer for all of humanity. There is a reality that there are barbaric forces wanting to bring us back to medieval times, wanting to put the whole world under Sharia law, put the whole world under a caliphate. It is time for the West to wake up and understand that basic human rights are under assault. Every human being who cares about freedom, liberty, freedom of the press, rights of minorities, freedom of religion, has to understand that Hamas and radicalized Islam, backed by Iran and Qatar, are the true enemies of civilization, and we must bind together and act as one.
What do you expect these pastors to be taking back after their experience?
My prayer and hope is that these pastors have had a life-changing experience and that they will go from being bystanders to getting on the playing field of history, that they will, in their cities, in their states, in their spheres of influence, lift their voice and declare, with the prophets of old, we stand with Israel, we stand with Jerusalem. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its cunning. We will not forget Jerusalem. We will stand as watchmen on the walls of Zion. And I just want to, for a moment, speak to every pastor in America and around the world. And I want to say, pastors, the time for indifference, apathy, silence is over. You cannot any longer be silent or stay distant from the question of Israel and the Jewish people. Silence in this moment is evil. Neutrality in this moment is evil. Non-involvement in this moment is partnership with evil. Dietrich Bonhoeffer lifted his voice as Nazism rose in Germany and tried to rally the church, and the church was silent. Pastors, it is time for you to embrace the call to stand with Israel and the Jewish people as never before. Get rid of your replacement theology, get back to the Word of God, get back to the people and land of the covenant, our elder brother, the Jewish people.
Still ahead, new vision for Israel. Lives changed from a trip to the Holy Land during this difficult hour. We heard from Bishop Stearns in our last segment, but Chris Mitchell also spoke with the pastors at the Western Wall. Having seen Israel up close, expanded their vision for and support of Israel, which they'll bring back to their congregations in the U.S. and the U.K.
When we were praying for one of the officials, we were praying under a menorah where it was a picture of Moses, his hands being lifted in his battle. And Aaron was holding up one hand and Hur was the other. The Lord gave me a prophetic word that Israel is going to have Aaron, who's known, holding up one hand, the people, but there's going to be herds raised up that we don't really know, that aren't really prevalent, but there's going to be an unknown force of people that are from the U.S. and around, and they're going to hold up the other arm of Moses, of Israel, and the battle will be won, and God will come through in these last days for these people, and that they won't be destroyed. And as we promote Israel, the whole nations are blessed, because that promises to Abraham, that through Abraham all nations will be blessed. So the issue of Israel is not an Israel issue. It is an issue of the world. It's an issue of Yahweh bringing down His glory and His presence to this kingdom. And it was the prayer Jesus prayed, that heaven might come to earth.
So my favorite part has been not just the sights and not just the moments, but the conversations around lunch tables and dinner tables as we're wrestling through what God's doing in this place.
What was it like seeing some of the communities down south?
It was absolutely gripping to go to the south and see the sites where Hamas invaded across the border and committed unspeakable atrocities. The sobriety of it all set in a fresh way. So to actually stand there on the soil where innocent blood was spilled and to look at the individual faces, it was a truly defining moment where all of a sudden the reality and the humanity of the suffering here in Israel becomes real all over again.
I think the most impactful thing for me is to understand a people that for 2,000 years had lost their land and their language, to come back. And I've traveled around the world. I think this is the most beautiful city in all the world. We talk about the 7 wonders of the world. To me, this has to be the first wonder of the world. And it says to me that he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleep. If God has been faithful to Israel, He's going to be faithful to me. Long live Israel.
Seeing the group of U.S. pastors encouraged one Israeli rabbi.
When you have people coming from the States to stand with us and to support us, and we feel very much that we're on the front line of a fight that's not our fight, it's all of our fights.
Yes.
And this is the fight of humanity in the Western world and the good people around the world. So we just want to say, I want to say thank you for coming. It was a great opportunity for me to happen to have been here and to see you guys and all the work that you're doing. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your support. And together, all of us around the world need to stand strong, stand together, and we will, with God's help, be victorious.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News at the Western Wall.
That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media and access our content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. Please keep praying for protection for Israel, IDF soldiers, the release of the hostages for those caught in harm's way, and for the peace of Jerusalem. And remember, the God who's watching over Israel and you and me neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.